Alina, you're the winner of this year's Smogathon. Can you please formally introduce yourself and tell us about the project?
Sure, I'm Alina Adams, founder and CEO of Artveoli, and we're a hardware company that's making fresh air inside buildings.
We're a hardware company that makes fresh inside buildings. And yet everyone thought here at Smogathon that the winner would be a company that actually goes on cleaning air, just cleaning it, purifying it through different types of filters, because that's what most people think about making the air better. Here in Kraków, we have quite an extraordinary situation in the sense that the city identified 24,000 traditional coal-fired boilers in 2015, and since then it's been replacing them gradually at a rate of 5,000–6,000 a year. And by 2019, it will be illegal to burn coal and wood in Kraków, which is a major, by Kraków standards, I would even call it a radical step and a promising one. But from your perspective, looking at the scientific data you have access to, in our previous conversation you mentioned MIT and different types of analysis that you read while developing your technology, what would be your first instinctive reactions, recommendations when you look at statistics of a city like Kraków? What would be the first ideas that come to your mind? What would you advise people first 3 steps?
Well, from my perspective, it's all about engagement. And engagement comes from the society and also on the individual level. And a lot of times, us normal people who live in the city, they see something, they want to do something, they don't know what to do. So giving them ways how they can help, how they can contribute to society in the very specific steps where you can wake up and do something and know, I have done something today to help. Because I can assure you, people in the city, they want to do something because they don't want to go outside and breathe this air. A lot of times it goes back to, do you want to punish people for not doing something, or do you want to reward them and incentivize them? So my intuitive way is to provide more information, educational, but also give them ways how they can help and support with the problem, and incentivize those who go above and beyond.
In the context of Poland and its geographic location, geopolitical history, it's quite tricky because, as you know, it's been the European hub of coal mining historically. And with the industry rate going down over the years, people tend to think that we actually have less pollution than we used to have in the 80s and 90s. So there is this popular perception that things are maybe improving slowly, but they are improving. So first thing, there is this perception of the importance of coal as the tradition, because a lot of people still work in the mining sector. And then there is this perception that things are improving. Now, you said that engagement, the storytelling angle to it, making people part of the story is important. How would you do it in the context of a city like Kraków?
It's an interesting challenge to tackle, and changing somebody's perceptions, that's where the media comes in place, right? Because as much as we can talk about it over and over, when you really trying to deliver the message and engaging people in terms of, you need some, if you remember Malcolm Gladwell talked about tipping point, you need to identify who are the people who could help bring this awareness, changing this perception, who could be your supporters, support of the media and government, to change this shift in the paradigm of the thinking, and can create this positive change in the steps with the overall society. So perhaps it could be some endorsements of local celebrities who understand the issues, so who want to support in some one way or the other. Activities, events, fundraising, you name it. Even before the concert, it could be some proceeds of the concert go to some charity or organization that supports awareness or certain activities to help people with the problem.
Of course, you mentioned the media and journalists, it's naturally more tempting for the media whenever they see a dark chimney to make it go viral, show it on the media, spread it through the social media. So it's naturally easier to communicate in those negative, criticizing, dark, gloomy terms. Now, do you think it's important to actually somehow sustain the positive attitudes of all those stakeholders in the process, or should one leave it to its own natural sort of development?
No, absolutely. Fear sells. That's what people are getting hooked on, and that's what they want to go back and see and read, and that's why it's captivating. It's a trend. It's creating a buzzword. You can also see what other activities can we do to support the trend of positivity, and that's the shift of the mindset, so to say. So figuring out what are the activities that even local within the Krakow, what kind of movements can you create that mass group of people can follow, and it becomes a local mini trend. And then getting on that mini trend, because a lot of times change happens not only all of a sudden everyone's changing, but it's a small incremental steps, and figuring out what are those small incremental steps that one person could do, and then getting other people supporting each other. And when there's multiple people connecting and joining the efforts with social media and publicity, then it creates a mini trend which can lead into a big stream of movement.
As I mentioned to you early on, together with the city, we are publishing a dedicated community page on Facebook. It's called Kraków O2, just like oxygen, easy to guess. And besides, we just wanted to have one hashtag for English and Polish. That's another reason. And we are providing daily English content about whatever is being done, what is missing, what the challenges are, graphics, stats, interviews with different people. But my question is, I'm going to give you an idea that I presented today in one of the presentations, and would you please tell me what your first reaction is to this idea? Feel free to be critical if you don't like it. But the idea is really simple. The idea is that of a company bike. Let me explain. Kraków now has one business sector that has outgrown all the other sectors. It's called business services, global business services. In 2010, 15,000 people were employed in this sector. 7 years later now, over 60,000 people. So it's grown rapidly, to say the least. It's huge. It's number one in Europe. The average of commuting by bike is roughly 5%, according to our statistics, which is not a big figure. If you look at stats from the Netherlands, for instance, a lot of people declare, almost 40% of people declare that they use their bicycle at least once a week for job or doing things around town. The statistics look much worse in Poland. Now, the idea about the company bike is that we have one company to begin with, which orders, let's say, 100 bikes with the manufacturer. And instead of spending, say, $100 for putting billboards around town saying, hi, we are this new employer in town, we want you to know about us, and it will be hanging in the city for 1 month. Instead of that, what they can do is order this city bike, which would be custom designed by employees and would have the company colors as advertising, which makes it possible that the bikes would be part of, advertising cost. And then you could develop an app that maps all the traffic so that employees can log on and say, okay, we've made, say, 75 kilometers this week. And then you get collective data for 500 employees, and you can map it, show it, make the app very attractive for the employees to use and play with. And you can actually also create incentivizing systems within the company to show that your company is not only interested in just paying for flat standard advertising, but it will not live for 1 month like a billboard. It will live for 10 years, and you can give it to an employee based on merit or as part of the welcome package. Sorry for the long explanation. Is this the kind of project that you think, oh, it will never work? Or is this something that makes you think about it a little longer?
Can I get some clarifications? So the main purpose...
So I was pitching and you're asking questions as a jury. Okay.
I just want to make sure I understand. So the main point is to incentivize people to using bicycles, right?
Yes. Believe it or not, but for most of the year, the air quality in Kraków is actually quite decent. It's only in winter that it becomes very problematic.
Yes, I've heard. So there's some types of incentives you can provide for people to use that. So since you have dual stakeholders, companies and people, I think first and foremost, I was trying to understand the demographic of people that will be using the bicycles, right? And then when you're talking to potential employees, who would be the segment or the scope of people, at least in the beginning, to start off as a pilot, for example. There are some programs similar in the United States, but they're not bicycles, but cars, where they put advertisement on the cars, and car was for free. So people would drive a car.
Electric cars or?
Yes, they were electric cars. So they would drive around cars, and they were free, but they would have advertising. So that's kind of like incentivizing people, but there will be advertisers who's paying for cars, essentially. The general understanding of incentives for regular people, I think it goes back to what market are you trying to target, and why they're currently not using bikes as a primary source, because there might not be this particular incentives that will be beneficial for them, but something else like a convenience. Is it easy to drop off or pick up the bike, or maybe some other ones in terms of safety, how safe it is to ride a bike around. Maybe there's specifically designated lanes in the city that will be marked off for bike lanes, where they'll feel comfortable, safe, and you can pick up and drop off the bikes. So there's multiple things that we can consider in terms of infrastructure, incentives, identifying the targeted groups that could be first adopters, and later on you can spread out into bigger segments. For example, you might not expect moms with kids taking them and pick them up and dropping off at the kindergarten on a bike, but you might expect some guys going in their startups in the morning just to trying to escape the traffic. So figuring out these hot locations, positions geographically where they're locating, make it convenient and easy, and then talking to those constituents and figure out, like, is that the right incentive to give them? And at the same time, it's a pretty clear value proposition for businesses. So hopefully they will be naturally tending to adopt this type of product.
Because when you think about businesses, what is it they do? They usually have very random CSR, which has very little to do with their core competencies, right? So they do some kind of charity work outside. Sometimes they plant trees because they want to be seen as green. Okay, but when you think about it, it's one of those potentially long-term solutions where you actually create a culture of people in a place like Kraków with 60,000 employees in one sector and companies competing to get the best into their nest, so to say. Then you think about it, how do you make yourself look different, stand out? How do you make a statement that you really want to be part of the solution? I asked one of the CEOs of a big company, internet company, famous company in Kraków, employing like 600 people. I asked about his assessment of how innovative are companies in Kraków, how creative are companies in Kraków about becoming part of the solution. And because he couldn't really answer this question, I added another qualifier and I said, can you think of one company in Kraków that has had one creative idea that everyone knows about that is linked to air quality? His answer was no. Now, but there is a bit of social engineering behind this idea, in the sense that imagine a situation you have 500 employees and you have 100 bikes. You give to 100 employees those bikes and you create a bit of a pressure on those employees who had not used bikes before, but now they have them, so they feel like testing this idea. Any other comments on that, Alina?
So in general, in terms of why companies don't adopt certain policies, I think they know it's a problem they want to do, but a lot of times if you look at the day-to-day operations, everyone's trying to put up their fires, especially small businesses or startups. They're really busy trying to figure out their internal operations, and as much as they want to put extra resources, it comes down to extra resources. How many of the resources are we going to put in to allocate to provide for this good cause? So a lot of times it might be just easier putting money in the charity, but adding someone or bring someone on a team, trying to plan, strategize, execute, follow up, and then change. It takes a lot of resources internally for companies. So if there are programs from outside that can help with that, there might be a little bit more buy-in from the company to join that. And I personally don't believe in putting pressure on employees to do certain things. I think it should be intrinsic motivation to do certain things. And the whole point of doing something good, I'm going to get rewarded. When the people want to do something, they don't do it just for for money, for some recognition. A lot of times, more longer sustainable change is happening from the inside. When somebody wants to make a change, when somebody wants to drive to work because it's going to be healthy, he's going to be good, he's going to get exercise and shape, and he's going to avoid the traffic, he's going to waste time. So trying to help incentivize and support those intrinsic motivations, I think that might be at the core. So talking to potential companies and stakeholders who would engage in these kind of companies and help them to realize this internal potential that employees have to stimulate this change.
I couldn't agree more with you. And the last question, not to have a little mercy on you after the jet lag, the last question is, listening to you, I'm deeply convinced you already have at least a major short-term strategy for your company. What do you think are like your key goals for near future for the development of this idea we've talked about here at Smogathon?
Define the near future.
Find the near future. Let's call it, let's be imaginative and visionary. Let's call it at least 2-3 years.
So we have already engaged in the new product development. So these first generation systems, they're focusing on removing carbon dioxide and converting it to oxygen. Next generation systems are going to have more technology built into it, and that's as much as I can say.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you, Alina. Best of luck and congratulations once again.
Thank you.